Welcome to this new episode of Political Adda. It is the 5th of August today and the 6th anniversary of the abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. We will talk about the 6 years of this abrogation. How has Kashmir changed? How have Kashmiris, how has the idea of India changed in the minds of Kashmiris, among many other things? And to discuss this, we're joined by Mr. Zafar Chaudhary, who is an author and a journalist. Welcome to ThePrint, sir.
Thank you.
And we're also joined by Saurav Raybarman, who you are familiar with. He's a key member of the political bureau at ThePrint. So, first up, for a large number of Indians, Article 370 had a lot of symbolic significance, and it was seen, the abrogation was seen as a moment of triumph for a lot of Indians. For Kashmiris, on the other hand, obviously, when this happened, there was utter shock that such a thing could happen in independent India. 6 years later, how do you see the attitude of Kashmiris having changed? Do you think there is a sense of reconciliation that has seeped in? How do Kashmiris view themselves and their relationship with India 6 years down the line?
All right. So I think to be able to help your audience to understand that what has happened over last 6 years and how do people in Jammu and Kashmir think about a life without Article 370, maybe we can go back a little bit into the history to understand that what did it mean to the people. So ever since its insertion in the Constitution of India in 1950, so in the political lexicon of Jammu and Kashmir, Article 370 has always been a sacred letter. No one ever imagined, no one ever thought that this could be abrogated at some point, even as that Bharatiya Jansangh, the precursor to the BJP in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, and then the BJP would bring up the issue in its political manifesto every now and then that whenever we come to power, we'll have the Article 370 abrogated. But no one ever imagined, no one ever thought, no one ever believed that someone, while coming to power in Delhi, will actually do something like this. And first time when BJP came to power in 1998 under Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and then Vajpayee came back in 1999, there wasn't any kind of threat, any kind of warning, any kind of stress to Article 370. There was an indication from Delhi that we'll probably like to continue with this. Rather, the regime under Atal Bihari Vajpayee indicated that we are willing to discuss with Jammu and Kashmir rather more empowerment under the Indian Constitution, Indian federalism, rather than abrogating Article 370. Then comes in the 2000s and 2010s, these decades have seen a lot of political developments between center and the political parties in Jammu and Kashmir. The 1990s was a decade of separatism when a number of groups, individuals, militants, separatist organizations, they surfaced and they wanted to break away from India. So then one of the solution was that let's find out a middle path. So middle path was that let's empower Jammu and Kashmir more than other states. Like National Conference came up in 1990s with the proposal of greater autonomy that was reverting to the pre 1952 conditions. And then in 2001, two People's Democratic Party came up with another proposal that was called self rule. So these were all within the constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, which means that these were an answer to the separatists, to the militants who were backed by Pakistan. So for all these conversations between Jammu and Kashmir and the center, Article 370 provided a starting point. Yeah, this is something there. This is something that has already been agreed upon constitutionally, and there is a stamp of approval of the will of the Parliament of the people of India. So this is something that we have as very basic. And now we need to negotiate something which could be more than this. So then comes 2014, and BJP and under Narendra Modi comes to power. I think a lot of people have forgotten that what happened at that time. So BJP entered into an alliance with the People's Democratic Party, and there was an agenda of alliance in which they mentioned very explicitly that we agree with the existing constitutional framework, which means that BJP also reassured the people of Jammu and Kashmir that we don't want to tinker with Article 370. So there was a lot of reassurance. So in this background, there was absolutely no apprehension, no fear that this Article 370 could go. Then comes this day, the August 5, 2019, that something beyond everyone's imagination that Article 370 goes. Now you are talking about that how is life in Jammu and Kashmir 6 years after the August 5, 2019. After having given this background, I think this is a story of political resilience. This is a story of pragmatism. That today, honestly speaking, I don't find many people talking about Article 370. The talk in Jammu and Kashmir today is about the restoration of the state, the reinstatement of the state. That on August 9, 2019, Jammu and Kashmir did not only lose its special status, but it also lost its status of the state. So this has been a historical state. This has existed for close to 200 years. So today, the dominant talk all across Jammu and Kashmir is that the state should return, that there should be reinstatement of the state. There's not much discussion about Article 370. So your question that there was a feeling of triumphalism in rest of India. So I don't find many people in Jammu and Kashmir challenging that feeling. So this integration, I think this was a completely wrong notion being projected at that point in time, that after the abrogation of Article 370, has this been possible to integrate the people of Kashmir with the rest of India? I think people of Jammu and Kashmir were always, in every possible manner, integrated with the Indian Union. So Article 370 was one special arrangement that has gone. Now people look forward to restoration of the state and a little bit of protection of their lands, the culture, their jobs, and empowerment of the state government. Yeah.
You spoke about how you really don't find people, pining for the pre 2019 days. But do you think, in a way, it is only natural that, if you look at the political discourse in India and especially in Valley also, there seems to be a broad political consensus when it comes to, the abrogation of 370. And I mean, there are not many voices calling for the restoration of Article 370 anymore. So do you think that's only natural?
So that's right. Basically, what has happened, that one has to understand Jammu and Kashmir, that people in Jammu and Kashmir have always never been one on their political issues. So one is that there is, the wider region, the Kashmir Valley and Jammu, and within Kashmir, there are different political views. There are some people who never even believed in Article 370. They wanted something else. This whole thing that has happened in 1990s and 2000s and up to 2010s as well. They said, Article 370 or the Indian constitutional framework is not something for which we have been struggling for. So they had some other ideas. And then there were the parties which wanted to have a larger negotiation with the Union of India, that look, if we want to act against these people who are backed by Pakistan and those people who want to break away from India, that we need to work out a larger political deal for Jammu and Kashmir, which could be a far larger, greater empowerment. A sort of, at one point in 2000s, they talked about a semi-sovereign status, that there is a nation and then there is a highly specially empowered state within that nation. Then we comes to Jammu region, which is of course has a different demographic dynamics. It's a Hindu majority region. So Article 370 was a completely normalized thing for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, but not to say that there was any demand or any movement for abrogation of Article 370. Now, since when Article 370 goes, people of Jammu and Kashmir say it was okay when the Article 370 was there. It's still okay if the Article 370 is still not there. The basic fact is that everyone knows, or any constitutional expert would also tell you, that there was hardly anything left in the provision of Article 370 that would differentiate Jammu and Kashmir from rest of India or from any other state in the country. So it carried more of a symbolism, that Jammu and Kashmir was the only state in India which had a constitution of its own. But that was just a book. The constitution was a complete mirror reflection of the Constitution of India. So it had a flag of its own. So these were a couple of things that gave a sort of, an emotional satisfaction or an emotional superiority to some people, that look, we acceded to India under very special circumstances, and this was something that was conceded to us in return, and this is something very sacred, very sacrosanct, very important to us. So that is an emotional thing, but of course that people are negotiating with that emotion at the moment as well.
If you can, you briefly touched upon it, but if you can really elaborate on how Article 370 was diluted over the years, over decades.
All right. So the most important thing under Article 370 was that, one description of the original case of Article 370 could be that a semi-sovereign status within the Indian federalism. It was because of this reason that you might have heard of this campaign of Mr. Syama Prasad Mukherjee and the Bharatiya Jan Sangh, that do nishan do pradhan ek desh mein nahi rahenge, which means that two constitutions and two flags. But the most important thing was that that laws enacted by the Parliament of India would not flow into the state of Jammu and Kashmir on its own until and unless there is an approval of those laws by the state legislature. That was an important thing. The the political head of the head of the state of the Jammu and Kashmir would be the executive head of the state, would be known as the prime minister. So you had two prime ministers in the. So that was the case at a number of other places in India as well that existed until 1952 when this larger harmonization took place. But in Jammu and Kashmir, that was agreed to be forever. That there will always be the elected person, the chief of the government would always be the prime minister. And then an equivalent of the governor in other states would be Sadr Riyasat. Sadr means president, Riyasat means state. That would be president of the state. So governors, as you know, are the appointees of the central government of the president of India. So every state has a governor, which of course the decision is taken by the prime minister and the home minister, but the formal orders are issued by the president of India. So in Jammu and Kashmir's case, it was agreed upon that the Sadr Riyasat would be an elected person by the legislature of the state and not to be appointed by the president of India. So the state legislature would elect that person, and this person would always be a state subject of Jammu and Kashmir. So this person would not be, coming from any other place. So this thing was diluted. This thing was done away with in 1965. These titles were done away with in 1965. So the position of the office of Sadr Riyasat was abolished, and first non-state subject person, like a person from anywhere else in the country, was posted as a governor in 1967. And this All India Administrative Services, which are norm across the country, that you have IAS, IPS officers, and they run your bureaucracy. They're part of the executive. So Jammu and Kashmir would not allow those officers to be here. Jammu and Kashmir would have its own local civil services. So that was done away with in 1958. Supreme Court did not have its jurisdiction. That was also brought in around the same time. Comptroller and Auditor General of India did not have its jurisdiction. That was also brought in the first decade itself, in the 1950s. And the Election Commission of India did not have its jurisdiction. But in 1962 onward, every election has been conducted by the Election Commission of India. And in the later decades, whatever law has been passed in the Parliament of India, either that law has been allowed to have immediate effect in Jammu and Kashmir, or the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly convened a session to give an approval or ratification of that law. So in that context, there was hardly the GST came, VAT came. So these were some of the laws that Jammu and Kashmir had resisted for a very long time. When these laws came up, so since Jammu and Kashmir had a special constitutional provision, they convened the assembly, they ratified the laws, and laws were implemented here as well. So this was completely hollow. There was hardly anything left. This was way back in early 1960s when Jawaharlal Nehru had said in the parliament that there's hardly anything left in Article 370, and this will go away with the time. And at a number of times later on, also it has been said that there is hardly anything that we should, worry about. So yeah. So, which is why I'm saying that if you talk to anyone particularly in Jammu, they would say, yeah, there was a life with Article 370. We were okay with that as well. There is a life after that as well. So there is hardly any problem. But this was more of an emotional case in Kashmir, because it's negotiation of the special constitution, negotiation of the special flag and the symbolism and everything that was negotiated by the political leadership that was situated in Kashmir at that moment. So there is more emotion, more sentiment associated with this there rather than elsewhere in the state.
You mentioned of the special powers that the J&K Assembly had for a few years at least, until after the partition. And now we've come to a position where, of course, Jammu and Kashmir is a union territory. There is so much talk about the elected assembly being no more than a puppet assembly. Has that in any way increased the alienation that the sense of alienation that Kashmiris feel?
So, frankly speaking, very honestly speaking, this is a matter of very, very deep hurt. This is a matter of emotional bruise because you have a state which enjoyed more constitutional powers and protections over decades, more privileges and importances over the decades. Like you're passing a law in the constitution, but then Jammu and Kashmir Assembly is empowered than any other assembly, more empowered than any other assembly in any of the states in India. And today, you have assembly which hardly matters in terms, the most assembly is the highest lawmaking institution of a particular state, which is of course Jammu and Kashmir, now a union territory. So the final arbiter on the legislation happens now to be the lieutenant governor, who acts as a representative of the Ministry of Home Affairs at the government of India. So assembly is not empowered, and people are politically wise, politically very conscious, and they see this whole thing that our mandate. This is a constitutional provision that the Constitution of India, the kind of empowerment that Constitution of India provides to every citizen of India. So that is not happening in the same manner in Jammu and Kashmir, that you have an assembly, you elect an assembly, but the assembly is not fully empowered to legislate. Even the power of legislation, the final arbiter on that case is the lieutenant governor. So this is where the government of India needs to do a quick reading. This is where the government of India needs to do a quick audit of the emotions, that people are reconciling with a very, very, tectonic shift in the constitutional relationship. So it's just 5 6 years they're reconciling, they're adjusting themselves to the new realities. Like Article 370's abrogation on August 5, 2019, on this day, was not this is not to be seen as an event. This is to be seen as a beginning of a long drawn process. So people are still reconciling, they're trying to adjust with that, the outcomes of that process. So it's during this time that government of India should understand that they should not take it, they should not be delayed any further, that the assembly is empowered, the state government is empowered. Then only the people of Jammu and Kashmir will feel respected, honored. And this slogan that let there be no special status for Jammu and Kashmir. Now the people of Jammu and Kashmir said that there was a time that we enjoyed special status. Today we are asking for just the equal status with other people in the rest of the country. So that should happen soon, and that's being talked about. That's being felt very strongly.
Why do you think the government of India is not doing what you strongly feel that it should do? That is the restoration of full statehood.
I think this is a very strategic, question before them as well. The manner in which this whole thing was done in 2019, they believe that there are a number of people who may appear to have reconciled with the whole thing that have happened, but deep in their hearts, they may be nursing very deep, bruises, by very deep pain. So they want to have a complete control of the situation. They don't want to hand over the power to someone else, so that people feel a little bit more empowered. They are able to exercise their political expression, and and they are able to bring the whole discussion, the whole discourse back to the central state. Second is that in terms of security, etc., they think that though that feeling, in my opinion, is completely flawed. A number of incidents have proved that absolute control of the security situation in the hands of center has not changed situation any drastically. There used to be incidents of terrorism violence before 2019, and there are incidents of terrorism violence after 2019 as well. So one of the more devastating, most audacious has been in April in Pahalgam. So they want to have a complete control over the political affairs, over the security affairs, and over the administrative affairs of the state. That's what I understand, and I don't think that should be a long-term strategy.
So this narrative of this high degree of success that the central government often projects, that look, there are no calls for any shutdown, there's no stone pelting. I mean, terrorism has gone down significantly. So are you questioning that entire narrative? You think it's flawed?
I think this is something that cannot be questioned. This is something that has to be very widely and wholeheartedly acknowledged. So the street violence has almost come to an end. There is hardly any incident of street violence over last so many years. The shutdowns, curfews, and hartals is almost a thing of the past now. If you talk to an ordinary mother in Kashmir, who is now able to send her child to the school the whole year. Earlier, there used to be, a few months of shutdown, a few months of hartal, a few months of some other kind of disturbance, and you would be able to go to school only 2 to 3 months put together. If you talk to the business community, if you talk to the people who are closely connected with the tourism industry, so normal life has tremendously improved. So the quality of life has tremendously improved. So I think one must wholeheartedly acknowledge and give this credit to the government of India, to the lieutenant governor here and the administration, everyone who has worked over last 6 years. But then, challenges of security, the challenges of alienation still remain, because there has been a problem for more than 7 decades. And if you think that, one event, or one process which has been unilateral in its entire nature, has settled the whole thing, would be a self-misleading kind of thing. So I think that understanding is required, that it's important that things have changed, but then you have to understand that things are not entirely normal.
So this improvement in the general law and order and security in Kashmir that you mentioned, do you think that's only the result of the actions taken by the Indian government, or has there also been a change of heart? Because it was only in the 2010s where we used to very actively see people come on the street, protests, especially at the time of Burhan Wani's killing. What led to this almost sudden change of heart among the Kashmiri youth?
So, very strong strategies of the government of India, the security apparatus, the new security doctrine, new security approach is quite visible, that they decided that we're not going to let any disturbance happen on the streets, come what may. So, earlier, for example, a terrorist would die and then they would allow people to come and mourn a terrorist's death. So, people would come in tens of thousands. So, funeral processions, etc. So that would make a lot of emotional connection, and this would become sort of a culture across. So what they decided that once a terrorist dies, it's going to be a property of the security forces. They'll take care of its the burial of the body, but of course with all religious rites. So they did not hurt any religious sentiments in that manner as well. So they made all possible measures. They put all possible measures in place that there is no street violence, there are no street disturbances. Now, you asked a very important question that, while we give credit to the security forces as well, but security forces existed before 2019. So there was not any, major magic that happened in 2019. And the people before 2019 were all duffers. They did not have any imagination. They did not have any ideas. They did not have any strategy. There have been a number of remarkable people who have helmed the affairs of security and administration before 2019 as well. After 2019, I think we need to talk about the Kashmiri people, that Kashmiri people are essentially very, very political in nature, and they understand, they are able to smell the political consequences, the political fallout of every event or anything that is happening even remotely. So I think there was a wider realization across Kashmir Valley. The people, when they saw the events of 2019 very closely, they realized that no, it's going to be very, very disastrous, because if this confrontation, even earlier you had a confrontation that would force Delhi to order a dialogue, to initiate an engagement with the people of Kashmir. They realized that now confrontation will end up only in a physical loss that will not convince anyone to initiate a dialogue or a political outreach or something. So I think this was a very conscious decision as well of the Kashmiri community to stay away from any kind of street violence, from any kind of tension and disturbances on the streets.
We can talk about Chief Minister Omar Abdullah a little. If you can share your thoughts on how he has been as CM in this term, and I mean the general perception is that he has been rather very conciliatory and accommodative towards the central government. Is not getting into confrontations. I mean, apart from a few exceptions like what happened on the Martyrs' Day on the 13th of July. And how has that been, and moreover, how has that been received by his own people, his electorate, his own party?
So if there is one person, one political person in whole of India who I think is leading a most difficult life at the moment, that is Omar Abdullah. So he has a huge, massive mandate of the people of Jammu and Kashmir who rallied behind him. They said that, look, this thing happened in 2019. So restoration of state is the first thing, but then There can be other discussions on issues of, empowerment, autonomy, something equivalent to that, protection of land, culture, jobs, etc. But then restoration of state is something very important. Our communicating our message to Delhi that we didn't like the way you did this. So they chose Umar Abdullah, his party, to rally behind him. They gave him the mandate and they said that now you negotiate to Delhi with Delhi on our behalf. You talk to Delhi on our behalf. So the question which your colleague asked that, do we credit entirely the security forces or the people of Kashmir as well? So people responded in a different way. They said that let's not do things individually. Let's put our faith in a political party, in a political leadership, and empower them to talk to Delhi, empower them to lead us. So they chose Omar Abdullah and his party. Once Omar Abdullah comes to office and he sees that there are no indications of any reconciliation from Delhi's side, he is not being fully empowered as a chief minister should be. His legislature is not empowered. His cabinet is not empowered. He does not have a state to run. He has a union territory, and then there are a number of decisions which bypass him, and he reads some of things on the Twitter or in newspapers as you or I do. So he's the most disempowered elected political person anywhere in the country in the moment. So, what do we think about Omar Abdullah at the moment? That is he a weak leader? Is he someone who is not capable of projecting the sentiments of the people? The burden of mandate that he carries on his shoulder, is he not able to determine that? My analysis of Omar Abdullah is that I think he has seen very closely as a part of it all that has happened in Jammu and Kashmir over last 35, 38 years. He has seen that gun has been used. He has seen that the street violence has been used. He has seen that pulling out of the governments, withdrawals from the governments has been exercised, have been practiced by people. He has seen that all kind of hostile and harsh languages have been used. He has seen that invoking Pakistan has been practiced in the past. So probably he thought that let's do something different this time. Let's not do any of those things which the Kashmiri leadership has done over last 35 years. Let's adopt a completely conciliatory approach. Let's make Delhi believe that look, you have done this thing. We have understand that you have done. Now let's adopt some kind of pragmatism and let's move forward from here. So this has been Omar Abdullah's strategy since October last year, but unfortunately, one has yet to see any response coming to the approach that he has adopted. So I'm not sure that for how long he is able to hold this on with patience.
In the aftermath of the attack in Pahalgam, sir, we saw two things. One, the very widely praised response of Kashmiris to the Pahalgam attack, where protests were held against the attack. But on the other hand, in large parts of India, we saw a lot of targeting of Kashmiris in general. How do you now assess what happened in Pahalgam and how that how Kashmiris viewed it and how the rest of the country viewed the attack and Kashmiris as a result?
See, one thing that I noticed that Indian media and the political leaders, opinion leaders, a number of people talked about post Pahalgam, but that look at the response of Kashmiris, how they have come out in open and they condemned the Pahalgam attack. So that wasn't the first time that the Kashmiris condemned. So I mean, you have to see society in its complexity. That Kashmiris have been militants as well. Kashmiris have killed Kashmiris. Kashmiris have killed security forces. But that does not mean that the whole of Kashmir was there. There were just at some point a few hundred people, at some point a few dozen people who were into this business of killing innocent people or who they thought that should be killed. So normally, if you look at the individual levels, every Kashmiri has felt bad whenever an incident of terrorism has happened. So no one has celebrated incidents of terrorism. Let's not assume that this is a completely wrong depiction that there wasn't such a thing earlier and this has happened only now because Kashmiris thought that this could be an assault on their tourism industry.
This was a more public and fearless condemnation of the.
It was public because the nature of incident. One was that an incident of such a nature, such a scale was happening after many years. So last such major incident was in 2019 when this attack happened on the security forces, the CRPF in Pulwama. But then they were the people in line of duty. So people have seen security personnel attaining martyrdom on the borders while fighting with the terrorists in Naxal areas in Kashmir, at a number of other places. So it's deeply unfortunate, but when a security personnel die, so I mean, you can see that this is something. This is one of the outcomes of how you are engaged into a certain thing. In this case, when the news just came out that they identified on the basis of religion, that's not something someone would easily take that, okay, this is normal. Second is that they lined up the male members and killed them in front of their family members. So that would need a monster, that would need only a heartless person or a community, that would need only stones that who would not get moved into emotions. So that was an all encompassing, all pervasive from across Jammu and Kashmir, the Kashmir Valley, Jammu region, everywhere, whosoever heard about that. And I'm very sure that at many households, they did not cook food that night. There was a mourning as someone within their own families have passed away. So that was the response from Kashmir. That was a complete disapproval, complete disapproval. People hit the streets and they offered their support to the government as well, to the security agency, that do whatever you like to do, but let's not have such incidents happening again in Kashmir. What happened in rest of India, that Kashmiri sellers, businessmen, students, not only Kashmir, I mean, you have to look at Kashmir in its entire complexity, that Kashmir Valley, then Jammu region. So this is an entirely complex, demographic, geographic, cultural, political mass. So in rest of the country, they started looking up for the residents of Jammu and Kashmir, and they were being targeted and harassed. That's unfortunately an outcome of the political narrative that has been going on in the country, which is not something that a very civilized society and mature democracy like ours should deserve. But that's an outcome of this political narrative that has been part of our political thinking over last 10, 12 years, that the otherization of Muslims, the otherization of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and the otherization of Kashmiris. So if something has happened in some part of Kashmir and you find a Kashmiri in Bangalore, since you are not able to come to Kashmir to express your anger, so you'll express your anger with that Kashmiri who you find strolling on the streets of Bangalore. So I think that in this case also, the political leadership, I think they were able to, of course, the kind of statements one would have expected did not come very, earlier, very sooner when these incidents were being reported. But then I think Prime Minister acted at some point, and the Home Minister, and instructions were given to the state police as well to find out that no such incident happens. But then this is unfortunate that at the government level, at the government machinery level, you have to intervene and ensure that there is no harassment of Kashmiris, while as every Indian should have thought that those who executed this incident in Pahalgam were not Indians. So everyone else in India is equally hurt. So people should believe in every other citizen of the country in the similar manner, rather than doubting that whether they are on the other side or or our side. So this is how I look at these two responses: one coming from Kashmir and one from some other parts of the country. We should not say that everyone in the country, was like that, but some parts of the country, some fringe elements, they responded in a different manner.
So one last question for me. Uh,
Sure.
so today, in Indian Express, former Finance Minister of JNK, Mr. Hasin Rabu, wrote about how the economy of JNK has not really. I mean, he has painted a very bleak picture of how the growth has gone down, borrowings have gone up, and unemployment has obviously risen compared to other parts of India. So, what is your assessment of the state of economy of Jammu and Kashmir post 2019?
2019.
I think there is, in terms of economy, we don't see any drastic development that took place after 2019, that on the basis of which we should determine that what has changed on the front of economy. So these were just newspaper advertisements over 3, 4 years that look, the Article 370 was a stumbling block in the economic development of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, since that has gone, so there is going to be an economic prosperity. So that was just a part of the narrative. So if you peel off the narrative, come on the ground, you'll find the progresses on the fronts of economy, infrastructure development, everything else on the same pace as it used to be before 2019. It's following the same pace because Article 370 was in no manner, in no case, a stumbling block in the economic development. People would come here, they could have taken land on 99-year lease, they could have done businesses. But then you have to understand that which place are you talking about? You're talking about Jammu and Kashmir, which is at the farthest, end of the country, and it's a completely hilly state, and this state has seen violence, militancy, separatist violence, and then a sort of uncertainty that it has a very long border with Pakistan, and one does not know. You saw Operation Sindoor, you have seen the earlier surgical strike, and responses to those strikes are Pakistan as well. So there remains uncertainty. So you will not going to find many major industrial groups coming in and making major investments. Like if you look at the portfolios of Adani, of Reliance, of Tata's, or any other companies, the kind of investment they have, for example, in one of the remote and rural states like Chhattisgarh, like Jharkhand, and some other similar state, they don't have any investment worth mentioning in Jammu and Kashmir. So here, the economic development has to come through the government activity, which is that economy will improve by way of an infrastructure-led, economic activity. That you are building bridges, you are building highways, you are building railway tunnels, you are doing a number of other government activity, and then there is this construction-led, this spin-off. Number of people get involved. Somebody is supplying trucks, somebody is supplying labor. So there is some circulation of money in the local pocket. So these development projects have been going on before 2019. These have been going on after 2019 as well. So we don't see any, for example, a rail coach factory coming here. We don't see any major industrial having come up here, on the basis of which we can see that how much employment that has generated. State government, in any case, the government of Jammu and Kashmir was already overburdened by the employment before 2019, and that continues to be overburdened by the government employment after 2019 as well. I mean, if you compare the government employment in Jammu and Kashmir, the per capita government employment in Jammu and Kashmir is much, much higher as compared to any other state in the country, because people still have dependence of a safe, secure, and dignified job in the government sector. So Jammu and Kashmir is not very poor. There is not major economic disaster, but at the same time, there hasn't been any major economic miracle that we say that has happened over these years.
So my last question before we wind up,
Sure.
you mentioned a very high degree of government employment in Kashmir. When I was traveling to Kashmir last year at the time of elections, people anecdotally reported. A lot of government servants anecdotally reported a very high degree of censorship and action taken against them if they even privately would voice any views that would be seen as anti-government. Is that sense true? How do you see it now, 6 years?
So this is one of those measures that we have been talking about, what led to improvement in the security situation. So the post 2019 regime adopted a number of techniques, a number of approaches. So this is one of those. So yeah, I mean, they have tightened some control over the government services, because there are accusations that before 2019 the government servants would conveniently engaged in the political activities as well. So I think that is a little bit too strong kind of regime at the moment. So for example, that there is a government servant or someone who is aspiring to be a government servant, participating in a competition and hoping to get a government job, but one of his distant relatives was a militant, say 20 years ago. So he would have bear the consequences of someone else's sin committed 10 years or 15 years ago. So that is a difficult situation. So people talk about that. People want this to change. The people want this to go away. So this is a little problematic. But then the state justifies that this is the only way that we can keep people away. from separatism, from militancy, at least those people who are employed by the state. But then this ends up doing injustices to a number of people, that there has been someone who has been completely steadfast, patriotic, nationalist, never ever been anywhere closer to separatism or militancy, but someone whose decisions were completely independent and individual decision 10 years or 15 years later in a distance relation can mar the prospects of career or integrity of a person in a different time span. So that is a bit of difficulty that people are facing, particularly in Kashmir Valley.
So 6 years after 2019, I think the story of Kashmir remains as complex, where there is some degree of reconciliation, but also a large degree, a high degree of alienation.
So what has happened in these years is that there has been a discussion in some political circles in rest of the India that Article 370 must go. That has happened, and that has been a bloodless operation. So that is an achievement that the government can claim. But politically, Kashmir remains a lot uncertain, a lot clueless, and I think a lot unsettled. There is, of course, a strong, emotional struggle that's going on between reconciliation and that's going on between uncertainty. So, which is why that while in my conversation with you or in any writing or conversation, I always emphasize and I always underline that Government of India should not take too long in understanding the current sentiment and understanding that it's the time to make the people of Jammu and Kashmir feel respected and honored and reciprocate their responses post 2019 by earliest restoration of the state and empowerment of the state government, and allow people to their democratic expressions in a constitutional framework as it happens in rest of the country. And I think if since 1947 and since 1950s, there has been this demand of referendum, plebiscite, that let's go and ask people to vote that whether they want to be on India's side and Pakistan's side or whatever. So if you have to count in people's responses post abrogation of Article 370, you should accept that there has been a referendum, that people are pretty much part of India, but within that they want a little bit of respect, a little bit of honor, a little bit of independence, as much as the Constitution provides in their decision making, their legislation, etc. So there is hardly any constituency which you could still think of being not with India or being against India. So I think these are some of the questions that still exist in Kashmir. These are some of the questions that people look forward to for answers. So there is this uncertainty. There is something, an unsettled kind of atmosphere that still prevails in Kashmir, and I think the government at New Delhi must clearly see this before it's too long.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chaudhary, for these very balanced views. And thank you so much, all of you, for joining us.
It was a pleasure talking to you both.